time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome into Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network on a Tuesday night, the eve of National Signing Day for 2018. It is the National Signing Day now. The December Signing Day is becoming the National Signing Day, not February. February has a little asterisk attached to it now. It used to be the big day. It's now here in December, early Christmas present for you recruit nuts out there. All day long, we've been checking on stuff, and the top stories of the day, recruiting-wise, would be Clemson's offensive line recruiting situation, as the Tigers apparently are not going to be getting either Jimmy Frisch or Cooper Dawson, as best we can tell at this particular time, and apparently have gone back onto the board looking at people that they've been recruiting previously, some who may be committed elsewhere, and they may be trying to turn one of those in their favor to add to their offensive line take. They're still waiting on Will Putnam, who has not yet made a decision, according to his coach, and is scheduled to sign tomorrow morning. Whether or not he'll announce tomorrow morning remains to be seen. Those are the big stories related to Clemson right now. As far as South Carolina is concerned, the Gamecocks continue to work on Jawan Sheffield, who is not going to sign tomorrow, and that's good news for South Carolina. He's been an Auburn commitment, but he's a little bit concerned about the Auburn situation with Gus Malzahn. And so he's going to wait. And that gives South Carolina a chance to get him in for an official visit in January. There is also Matthew Bedford, big offensive lineman in Memphis, who remains undecided. South Carolina in the mix, along with Mississippi State and Indiana. He'll be signing tomorrow morning. Don't know where he's headed yet. And Chris Steele is not signing tomorrow, but he is going to announce on January 5th. He's just not going to sign an LOI. Some of the top stories of the day in recruiting, will give you more details on those stories and the other news of the day coming up a little bit later on. Meantime, today, Will Muschamp met with the media here in Columbia to talk about bowl practice. They have 2 practices in the books. You'll hear from him. And it was media day up at Clemson today with the players preparing for the Cotton Bowl. The Tigers have been into practice since last week, and they are getting ready for Notre Dame. Willie P. went up there for that. I was over at Muschamp today, and Pro was here at the studio watching women's lacrosse.
Not true.
That was our day today.
No.
So how was no major news out of Muschamp today? Nobody else has decided not to play in the bowl game. Injury news sounds pretty good. Sounds like most of the guys who can play, who've been nicked up, are going to have a chance to play on that defensive side. That's going to help. And he has a lot of respect for the Virginia Cavaliers and the team that Bronco Mendenhall has put together.
As far as Clemson goes, again, we weren't able to get much news from the standpoint of where Dabo Swinney is. Dabo will address the media tomorrow after the signing day stuff is all taken care of around 1 o'clock. But as far as the players go, my one takeaway, and this was kind of odd, and I almost wonder if some of the players who said these things were realizing kind of what they were saying, but there was almost some insult-driven stuff from the team that played last year against Alabama, from the guys who are on this year's team, and even from some of the underclassmen. They felt, and again, this is according to a couple of players we talked to, Amari Rogers, Kayvon Wallace, and T. Higgins most specifically, were all asked about a line of questioning about comparing this year's team to last year's team. And they seem to think collectively that last year's team was more individually oriented than team oriented, and that a lot of players were just kind of out for their own interests and on for themselves. And even Amari Rogers, in an interview you'll hear with me later on in the hour, he went on to even say that he thinks that they were not prepared enough or didn't prepare the correct way. Not necessarily that they took Alabama for granted, but they basically did not prepare properly for that game against the Crimson Tide last year, which shocks me, Professor Tom Hayes.
As I said before, I think some young guys make a statement and talk about trying to build up what they're doing, and they don't even realize they're tearing down the people that came before them. Let's face it, Clemson, you would have to have a strong constitution to be prepared to play that Alabama team that you took something from them and they wanted. And to the point where they even rubbed it in, as I said before, and used one of their defensive linemen on a pick play to score a touchdown similar to the one you won the year before on. So to say that team was not together is not correct, because they wanted to prove that they could win without Deshaun Watson, and they came at least into 2 games in doing that.
That part of it, again, shocked me. One other thing that did kind of, I don't want to say shock me, but I found interesting is I talked a little bit with Trevor Lawrence. He says that he has had some back and forth communication with Deshaun Watson. Watson kind of giving him some advice before the South Carolina game and again before the ACC championship, just kind of how to prepare through the championship phase. And I also asked him personally, I was like, have you talked at all with Kelly Bryant? And he said he did. He talked with Kelly before he made his decision to go to Missouri. And one thing that he said that really stuck with me is that he didn't want what happened, the circumstances that surrounded Bryant's departure from Clemson and subsequent arrival at Missouri. He did not want to let all of that stuff affect what he thought was a pretty positive relationship between the 2 players, and I found that real mature from his perspective and from Bryant's as well.
All right, so we'll hear from the Tigers. We'll hear from the head Gamecock tonight. Also, speaking of head Gamecocks, Frank Martin will join us live at the bottom of this hour. The Gamecocks have a huge basketball game, the middle game of a 3-game set that will give you some true insight into this team. Michigan was a really, really good test, and they made a good showing for themselves, losing on the road to an outstanding Michigan team. Virginia up next, equally a national championship contending team. And then the basket brawl for it all on Saturday with Clemson coming to the Colonial Life Arena. So the Gamecocks in the midst of a 3-game test, and we'll see what they do tomorrow night against Virginia. It would be in South Carolina's interest, best interest, I would say, to keep the scoring low. You know, these will be 2 teams. We know what kind of defense Frank Martin wants to play if he can get his guys to play it, and we certainly know what kind of defense Virginia can put on you.
Yeah, it's weird because, again, I think that Frank Martin probably envisioned a much different team to go into this first part of a home-and-home with a team that, you know, despite the fact that they were the first #1 seed, upset by 16, it was a team that was the #1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament last year. Let's not forget that. And they have a lot of great players that are a part of that team that are back for Tony Bennett's squad. And you know, they're a team that likes to run run the entire shot clock. They will wait for their shot, Pro. I mean, that's the one thing that's theirs. They will take a shot early in the clock if they have it, but for the most part, they like to limit possessions because they run their offense. They use the entire 30.
Well, I know this analogy is way out of proportion, but I'll use it anyway. Virginia's like a good running football team.
Yeah.
If they have the lead on you, a 5-point lead seems like a 15-point lead. Similar to if Georgia Tech's, option game is running.
Right.
But notice that in the game they did lost, you talk about Corn, Maryland, Baltimore County never let Virginia get in the game. So they couldn't play catch up the way that the most good teams do. And that's what you have to do at Virginia. You have to keep it close. Whether the scoring is low or high, you better be within 2 to 3 points of Virginia throughout that ball game.
And just comparing what we saw Clemson face last year with Virginia, again, you have to shoot well. You have to create easy buckets for yourself, and you can't settle for guarded threes, guarded jumpers. A lot of the stuff that I would say before the Michigan game, South Carolina really had been riddled with.
Tonight, Clemson is at home to take on Charleston Southern. That game will tip at 7 o'clock at Little John Coliseum. The Citadel is playing at Campbell tonight. The Citadel playing excellent basketball. They are well ahead of their normal win pace, and they're very excited about things there. And that is it for teams in action tonight around the state. So Frank Martin coming up. We've got Will Muschamp coming your way. We've got Clemson football players coming your way as well. We'll take your phone calls too. 800-956-7266 is the number. Email talkback at sportstalksc.com, and on Twitter, it's at SportsTalkSC.
Not only that, but we will come back with some good news for South Carolina's football coaching staff. The administration at USC doing some real work today with the Board of Trustees to ensure a lot of South Carolina's football future upcoming for Will Muschamp and his staff.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
So not only on the eve of National Signing Day, the Gamecocks are hoping to get some signings from prospective athletes. Their coaches put some pen to paper on some new deals today, Mr. Cornblue.
Indeed. You know, this is not unusual, the day before signing day, for a school to put out information like this. Not only the assistant coaches, Muschamp gets a one-year extension that'll run through 2024. Okay, December 31 of 2024. So now technically that's 6 years, right? Yes. No increase in base salary, stays at $1.1 million, guaranteed outside of $200,000. Now will apply to the extension. He will earn $4.3 million in guaranteed outside compensation, total compensation of $5.4 million. And then Brian McClendon gets a 2-year extension to 2021, increases the base salary to $500,000 guaranteed, outside compensation to $500,000, so that's $1 million. Travaris Robinson, 1-year extension to 2021, no increase in his compensation. He's already over $1 million. Dan Werner gets a 1-year extension to the end of 2020. Base salary increases to $500,000, outside comp to $200,000. So that's a $700,000 deal. Remember when we had Ryan Helinski on with us, and he said
yes,
that Brian McClendon would be getting some very good news here. And, you know, this shows a commitment from the administration to keeping the staff together. These are the coaches that Muschamp wants on his staff. These are the coaches that Muschamp believes is an integral part of making them contenders in the SEC East. And the goal of making the playoffs is something that, you know, they're still striving for. And it's very important, not just in terms of recruiting, because being familiar with your high school coaches you're dealing with and with your territory and with the athletes, that's big. But able to keep the same vernacular and keep the same mindset together when you're dealing with the players year in and year out, that's what helps you to develop your team.
Well, it's not even that, Corn. It's the evaluating process. The fact that they all know what Will Muschamp wants on the defensive side of the football. They all know what he wants on the offensive side. Brian McClendon has his system in place. Dan Werner has his tutelage in place with a very highly touted quarterback coming in next year. And the other part of this, too, from Werner's perspective, you know, we had heard about the rumblings about him possibly maybe being interested in that situation at Ole Miss. This tells me kind of more of the same that we had heard from the back channels from people who had been reporting this, the fact that this is kind of the retirement-ish gig for Werner, and this is basically somewhere where he basically thinks that this might be his last stop, and he really doesn't have any aspirations of doing anything further other than being South Carolina's quarterback's coach, which is fine.
And he doesn't want – and he wants to be with his family right now and not take all the recruiting trips. But, you know, it's funny – what we're saying, I think, is the basic law of college football. You got to have a staff that is intact, which is when I just want to tell the fans that what Alabama's doing is unprecedented.
Right.
I don't see how they keep that revolving door, but the brand of Alabama sells itself. And, of course, you got the dictator. But his coordinators go in and out and in and out, and they still win. It's crazy.
I hate to make the comparison to Clemson, but I mean the last major assistant they lost was Chad Morris, and they hadn't lost a step since.
FCS All-American team announced today from Wofford. Fullback Andre Stoddard was named to the second team. Wofford defensive lineman Miles Brown, Charleston Southern defensive lineman Solomon Brown, and Citadel long snapper Patrick Keefe were named to the third team. This is the official FCS All-American team by stats. The Southern Conference Basketball Player of the Week is Matt Rafferty of Furman.
My Paladins.
13.5 points, 12.5 rebounds per game last year.
Yes, I'm adopting the Paladins. Go ahead.
Not surprised.
Go ahead.
Collegiate baseball preseason ranking is out. Coastal Carolina, the highest-ranked team from the state, at number 12.
A lot of returning players on that team. Gary Gilmore's squad.
Clemson at number 15. South Carolina got votes, but I'm not sure who was doing the voting, the panel of the folks there at the newspaper. But not enough to break into the top 40. A team that was one win away from the World Series. And, I mean, Gamecocks have enough coming back to be gaining more respect than that.
They lose a lot of offense, a lot of pitching, and there's pitching that they thought they were going to have that they won't have because of the Tommy John injuries.
I think they're going to be just fine.
I think that's what they're looking at is who the pitchers are going to be. So it's not so much that they're down on South Carolina. It's just that there's question marks that they can't answer.
I still wonder how Clemson's going to get along without any beer.
LSU is 1, followed by Vanderbilt, UCLA, Texas Tech, and Stanford.
Seth.
Yeah, we get it. All right, to Will Muschamp, who met with the media today over at Williams-Brice to talk about practice and also Virginia. And here he is, his opening remarks about being on the field. Second time in bowl practice today, and then some comments on the Cavaliers.
A little rocky coming out of the break there. We gave our guys 2 weeks off and required lifts about 4 times, but much better day today. 2 training camp-like practices, really working on South Carolina. A lot of young guys getting reps, which obviously, especially on the defensive side of the balls, happen anyways. But really pleased with the effort today. We'll start on Virginia tomorrow, practice Thursday, Friday, and Saturday morning, and really, again, concentrate on us first of all while we're here, but have the entire game plan done by Saturday morning. When we break on the 22nd, we'll give the players the 23rd and 24th off, report to Charlotte on the 25th, and have a walkthrough and meetings, and then practice on the 26th, 27th, and then have a walkthrough on the 28th, and obviously we play on the 29th. So, but very pleased with today's effort and looking forward to getting started on Virginia. Got a very good football team. Bronco Mendenhall is a guy that I've respected from afar. Met him for the first time last week. Really good football coach. You turn the tape on. Teams play hard, they play fast, they play physical. You turn on the tape offensively, Bryce Perkins jumps out at you as a guy that creates a lot of issues for you defensively. Off-rhythm plays, some issues in the run game they create with an extra hat, some option principles that they bring to the table, which are issues you've got to deal with. I'm glad we've had a little bit more time to look at them and digest a little bit of some of the things that they do and the issues that they present. Ellis, the running back's a really good player. Both of those guys are right at 1,000 yards rushing, 950 and 932 or something like that. But both guys you see them moving the chains a lot in the run game. Zacchaeus, number 4, is a guy that does a lot of things for him. He's got 80-something receptions, carries the ball for him. I think the next guy with receptions is right at 40. So that tells you as much as he's been targeted a lot. But a really good football player, creates some explosive plays, but multiple formations and personnel groupings and run game issues. And we got to work through those things defensively. 3-4 in their structure. They will play some 4-down. Both outside linebackers are impressive, long, athletic guys that get issues. They do a lot of things in the back end. 34 Hall's an outstanding corner, 6'1", 205 pounds, probably one of the better corners we've seen all year. But this guy's a really good football player. I think they're 14 in the country in interceptions. They do a great job of getting the ball off of you, and they create a lot of issues on the back end with some different things they do movement-wise. So, again, glad we've got a little bit more time to prepare, and they're really, really good on special teams. Injury-wise, Bryson Allen Williams is practicing, looks good. J.C. Horn's practicing, looks good. Jalen Dickerson is a little limited, but we think will be full speed by the end of the week, and we'll be prepared for the bowl game. And Kier Thomas and Aaron Sterling can continue to progress, and we'll see how they do moving forward.
All right, Will Muschamp from the presser today. We'll hear more from him coming up a little bit later on. Of course, this is kind of interesting. Think about this. This is truly turning the clock back to, 1971? That would be the last year South Carolina played Virginia in both football and basketball because it was their last year in the ACC.
We will know, I would say, within the first 10 minutes of the football game where the heads of both of these teams are. And I think you'll have a good barometer of where the game will flow and who will dictate that tempo.
I think Virginia will be very psyched for this. Anytime an ACC team sees SEC,
oh, absolutely,
that's a sell. Plus, this is a team, and I talked about this before, they're hungry for any type of win. Because when you lose 15 in a row, and I did not see that, Cohen, until I looked at it, they've lost 15 in a row to their rivals, Virginia Tech, and 19 out of the last 20 years.
And so the Gamecocks have a one-game winning streak over the Cavaliers.
I think I was prepubescent last time Virginia beat Virginia Tech.
2003 and 2002, remember, they had that home-and-home series with Virginia.
Right.
Yes.
Lou Holtz was coaching for the Gamecocks. They split. Al Groh was the head coach at Virginia then. They split those 2 games.
Don't say that name in front of me.
Which one?
Al Groh.
I'll say it behind you. Al Groh.
Stop it.
Back in a moment.
treat for us, as always, when we get a chance to hear from the head basketball coach of the South Carolina Gamecocks. Big week for Frank Martin's team. They host Virginia. They host Clemson. Part of what has become, Phil, a very hefty non-league slate in advance of their conference season.
Indeed. Great to have the coach with us. But before that, it's football signing day tomorrow, Frank. Do you think the Gamecocks will get that left tackle they covet?
Oh, boy. You guys want to talk football, I'm all in. This basketball stuff gets me confused sometimes.
It's good to have you with us. And middle game of a pretty tough stretch for you. Thought you guys took a big step forward there against Michigan in terms of efforts, if nothing else. Maybe not the execution you like to see. In the practices since Michigan, have you seen more of that execution you want to see?
Yeah, we keep growing. I mean, we've played better basketball as we've kind of moved through the year. Obviously going to Wyoming and losing is not something that any of us were happy about or proud of. We felt we had good practices going into that game, and then we got there and, the altitude, guys kind of not being able to breathe, and we didn't handle being on the road very well. It is what it is. And, but we bounced back from that. We didn't pout. We had great preparation. I thought we played against Michigan like in our best structure that we've played all year. And what hurt us was not defensive rebounding. Michigan just beat us on the glass, and they got their threes off offensive rebounds. We got to do that better. We're not good at that right now. And since then we've had real good practices, and we're in good spirits. So I'm excited about taking the court tomorrow and seeing what happens.
Why is Coach Sarr having such a difficult time rebounding?
Yeah, I wish I had that answer. I really do. He was a better rebounder as a freshman than he is right now, and I wish I had that answer. I'm frustrated with it. I know he's frustrated with it. We show film. We're on him. We're encouraging him. The whole ball of wax, and he's just not rebounding. And it's not a desire thing. He's just not going to get the ball. He's trying. He goes out there and he tries to compete. He throws his body around, but when it's time to go get the ball, he's just not going to do it.
Gamecock head coach Frank Martin joining us here on Sports Talk. I don't mean this as a slight to last year's team, Frank, but I think you can even admit that this backcourt, especially with the youth and the length that it provides, Lawson and Moss, it has to excite you. How do you see this group continuing to develop? Because I have to think they've exceeded your expectations so far.
Oh, a whole freshman class. I'm extremely excited about them. I think, and when you throw in our sophomores and Hase and Justin Minaya, I'm extremely excited about that group of young kids that we got in the program. We're last year's team. The one thing last year's team had that this year's team doesn't have right now is Frank Booker. He gave us, forget the 3-point shots. He gave us a personality. He gave us an enthusiasm for everything that he did every day, which made everyone else excited about what they did, which then allowed us to become a team with a personality as the season went on. Early in the year, he wasn't good. We weren't good because he was trying to figure out what I wanted. I was trying to figure him out. But as time went on, his enthusiasm, his constant desire, his relentless approach gave us a personality. And that's what this team's looking for right now. And, losing Justin hurt us in that department. We continue to push. Hassani Gravit's been a lot better this year than he's ever been for us. I hope it's a trend that continues for him, not just with his playing, but with his whole approach. I hope it's something that continues for him. And, Chris is Chris. Chris is going to lay it on the line for us, and he's got to, continue to do that. And, he's playing better. We're playing better. We got to stay optimistic there, but I'm extremely excited about our freshman class.
With Minaya being injured and you're playing more minutes for Keyshawn Bryant, how has that accelerated his development?
Yeah, it's accelerated his development, and it continues to make my bald spot get bigger. It's kind of twofold deal there. It's But Keyshawn has basketball instincts. He's trying to learn how to play basketball, but he's got basketball instincts. And obviously, you guys have watched him. He's got elite level athleticism. He's learning how to use that athleticism to do more than dunk. He's learning how to use it for defensive principles, for little things that maybe the average fan don't understand, which is use that athleticism to get to the screen, not get screened, not give up a play, not give up on a play, impact the game in more ways than just dunking. And he's got feel, and I'm starting to understand him a little better as a player, so I think I can help him better. I'm understanding him as a person, so I think I can help him better. But he's fun. He's fun to be around. And here's the best part about these freshmen. Whether they play 2 minutes or they play 20 minutes, whether we hug them or whether we scold them, there's no pouting, there's no moping, there's no whining. They're ready to go again, and they're excited about that next opportunity.
Frank Martin with us here on Sports Talk. USC and third-ranked Virginia tomorrow night at the CLA. So, you play Virginia, and possessions are at a premium. You've got to protect the basketball, and you got to make shots because they D you up as well as anybody, and they shoot it well too. So offensively, you guys have got to be real good.
Yeah, somehow, some way, we got to make it a higher possession game. The more possessions, the better. We have to make jump shots tomorrow. If we have one of those situations like we did on opening night where we're 0 for 18, I can tell you today we're not going to win. We're going to have to make some jump shots. And then we can't turn it over. And then defensively, we have to be rock solid in our coverages because, Virginia, they're very experienced. All their guys have played a countless amount of minutes for them. They have unbelievable confidence in what they do. And they play with, just like Michigan's team, they play with tremendous pace, with tremendous discipline, and their spacing offensively is very good. So what happens is if you make a mistake, they kind of smell it. And as soon as they see one guy relax on defense or get to the wrong place, they immediately attack that. And that's a sign of a good basketball team. And that's why they've had the success they've had over, the last 3, 4, 5 years.
I'm going to ask this carefully, Frank, so you don't yell at me. But is there a target date you think that the peak for this team, especially with it being so young, do you have a date picked out that you think, okay, this is where we can be at our peak of our development?
Why would I yell at you? I think that's actually a pretty darn good question.
Okay.
There's never a peak in learning. I don't believe in putting ceilings on people. I don't believe in putting learning in a box and it's like an elevator. You push the button that you want to get to that day. Learning's an everyday thing. You're never trying to put a ceiling on anyone, let alone a young kid. Nor do you create an expectation that you have to be this good by this day, because then if they don't get that good by that day, then there's disappointment, and you don't want to deal in negativity. So you just keep pushing and challenging to grow every day. And at the end of the day, what I'd like to know is that our team, whenever we play the last game of the season, whatever day that is that our team was the best version of it that it can possibly be. And that means that we kept getting better as the year went on.
I like that answer.
I can't think of a better way to go into a National Signing Day tomorrow than talking Gamecock basketball with Frank Martin.
You guys have come a long way from 7 years ago. Come a long way from 7 years ago.
I'm part of that.
You're dragging us kicking and screaming into the basketball world. All right.
Think about this. We just played at Michigan, and we got the number 3 ranked former ACC rival, Virginia Cavaliers, coming into the CLA. Don't you think that's pretty good, given to what our schedule was like 7 years ago?
I think you should just keep doing exactly that. Those are great December games. Should have a big crowd, enthusiastic crowd. We thank you for joining us tonight. We'll see you over there tomorrow night.
Appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much. Frank Martin.
That SEC schedule doesn't look bad either.
No, it doesn't.
If you just like
but
basketball.
I do like to see them play these kind of games, and I think they should continue to schedule that way.
Sure.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
The latest recruiting news in just a moment in advance of National Signing Day tomorrow, but it was Media Day over at Clemson, and really, I think the most eye-opening interview that I did of the 11 that I conducted over there at the Poe Indoor facility earlier today was that of Amari Rogers, Clemson's sophomore wide receiver, who spoke with me on a number of topics, namely comparing this team from last year's team and how he, as a rising sophomore and somebody who does not have the experience of winning a college football playoff game, how he feels about going into this one, wanting to right the ship and get the taste of last year out of his mouth.
It definitely feels I'm more comfortable for sure. You know, I've been through it last year, so just coming back through the whole process, you know, I just feel more ready. And, you know, I feel like the team feels that way too. So I feel like we're approaching it differently, and we're just gonna go through and do what we do.
What do you know about the process this year that you didn't know going into it last year?
Just not to underestimate anybody. You know, last year I feel like we didn't prepare the right way. You know, this year, you know, last year, after what happened last year, I feel like we're more focused and we're taking the process more seriously.
You got a lot of guys on this team who have won college football playoff games, won national championships. You know, how much do you kind of remind those guys, like, hey, this is my second year here. I've accomplished nothing. I want to make sure that this ends the right way.
Yeah, because, you know, my whole life I've kind of been on the winning side. So, you know, I just let people know that, you know, I'm trying to win a national championship. You know, I'm just letting them know that I'm going to do anything, and I know that the team, everybody on the team is willing to do anything too. So, you know, I just want them to know that I'm on board and I'll do anything for us to win the national championship.
How hard was that to flush last year?
It was hard, but, you know, we had to get back to work. And I know that we had a lot of people coming back, and a lot of people knew the result of last year. You know, I feel like we've used that as motivation, so it's definitely helped out too.
How much will getting to the national championship kind of fully get that out of you? So just getting the game in Santa Clara, just getting past this level of the round, how much will that help getting past NFL draft?
I feel like we've been past last year's loss. You know, this year we've just been focused on this season, doing what we can do this year, accomplishing everything that we can accomplish. And you know, if we make it past Notre Dame, then, you know, we're happy. But, you know, we're not finished yet. We still got the national championship. So.
How much do you think about the bevy of weapons that your quarterback has, especially in the wide receiver room?
Yeah. You know, it's special. You know, we have 9 receivers that can play and can probably start at any other university. So, you know, that's pretty cool. And the running back room is dynamic too, with 4 guys that can come out and run the ball very, very good. They can catch very well. But, you know, the offensive line is a great tool too. Because, you know, if he's not protected, then, you know, he can't throw or do the things that he does too. So,
what are you expecting out of Notre Dame?
A very disciplined, smart team that's going to come out and play hard. You know, they're going to give us their best effort, like every team will. And, you know, it's going to be a good matchup.
And as Amari Rogers of the Clemson offensive echelon of wide receivers, 9 of them you can put in anytime. And the one thing I think too, Corn, is that they bring a lot more weapons, at least a lot more seasoned weapons into this matchup with Notre Dame and into this playoff run than they did last year going into that game against the Tide.
It's going to be, I think, a good matchup between the two. You know, you got a freshman quarterback. The experience he got during the regular season is all well and good, but now this is a whole nother world stepping into the Cotton Bowl. In Jerry's world, in the national semifinal against a good Notre Dame team. So this will be a game where Clemson is just not going to be able to sashay in there and win. They're going to play, you know, some of their best football of the season. They played extremely well in beating Pittsburgh in the ACC championship game, and, you know, kind of picked up the pieces that were left on the ground in the game against South Carolina, especially on the defensive side. And I would imagine they're going to try and, you know, build on that performance and add to what they did against Pitt defensively against a much better offensive team in Notre Dame than Pitt was. And then conversely, I mean, how good is Notre Dame's defense against an offense like Clemson's? Mm-hmm. You know, I think this is where you'll see how well Trevor Lawrence handles the brightest spotlight, the next to brightest spotlight of them all in the national semifinal.
Well, you know, the key point for a young player like him is don't put undue mental pressure on him. Tell him to go out, play his game, do his thing. And that also means with his arm talent, he will have to take some shots that a lot of quarterbacks don't take. So you don't want him to be tentative and just take the easy route, because when he stretches a defense, then Notre Dame is right for the picking for that running game. And that's the key. They've got two poisons they could throw at Notre Dame at any time, but the ability to stretch the field is why he is under center now.
All right, let's get to the recruiting report for tonight here on the eve of the early signing period, which I think eventually might become the only signing period because, for the most part, everybody is signing in December or they're making their announcements in early January at some event. There are a few that'll hang around till February now, but the vast majority are going early. However, one who is not is wide receiver cornerback Jashawn Sheffield of St. Simon's Island, Georgia. According to his coach, who I spoke with about 6 o'clock after talking with him earlier in the day, Sheffield has been committed to Auburn, but he is concerned about Gus Malzahn's status there, things that have happened at Auburn in the last couple of weeks. USC and Florida State have moved in hard on him and making a big push, and he's going to take official visits to both in January. So this one will not end tomorrow. USC commitment quarterback Ryan Helinski will sign tomorrow morning, 10 to 11 Eastern time. He'll be signing at his home. According to his coach at Roswell, Georgia High, Matt Kemper, linebacker Tyrone Hopper is set to sign at 8 in the morning. And to the coach's knowledge, it still looks like Florida for him. USC has been trying to turn him, but the coach says it looks like it will be Florida for Hopper. Now, the nightly update on Will Putnam. According to Coach Richard Wayner down at Tampa Plant, still nothing from his star lineman as of this evening. The family's still discussing the options: Clemson, Florida State, and Auburn. They are scheduled to sign tomorrow morning at 7:30. And then there is a ceremony set for 1 o'clock on Thursday. And right now, don't know if Putnam is going to have anything to announce after he signs tomorrow morning, if indeed he does sign tomorrow morning, or wait until Thursday. The reason he had set Thursday for his ceremony was his grandparents were out of the country, and he wants them to be there to be a part of it. So this one remains up in the air at this point. Same thing with offensive lineman Matthew Bedford of Memphis, who was in the blue-gray all-star game in Arlington, Texas last night, set to sign in the morning at 10 Eastern. His coach tells us that he is not sure, the player is, who he's going to sign with. In fact, Bedford put out a tweet this afternoon saying as much, that he's still up in the air. Indiana, USC, Mississippi State. He's been committed to Indiana, but USC, Mississippi State are in there too. Cornerback Chris Steele, Bellflower, California, told us last night he's not signing tomorrow. In fact, he said he won't be signing an NLI at all. He plans to announce January 5th at the Army All-American Game and enroll at the school the next week. USC, Florida, Oklahoma, Oregon, and Southern Cal are the finalists there.
Was anybody signing? That's my question.
Yeah, there'll be plenty signing.
Okay.
Sockasty wide receiver Kenny Solomon was offered by UMass. Some of his other offers are UCF, Coastal Carolina, the Citadel, Marshall, Charlotte, and others. Jimmy Fritsch of Greenville has the Clemson offer and Nebraska as well. And the word seems to be that Clemson's moving in another direction. Paul Strelo of Tiger Illustrated has been reporting that Clemson has another offensive lineman that it could be signing tomorrow morning. He did not give a name or any other indication other than it was somebody that Clemson has been recruiting previously. Yeah. So apparently they've got one under wraps that they're going to be signing or potentially signing tomorrow, which means Fritsch is probably going to head to Nebraska. And it appears Cooper Dawson, who wants to be a defensive end, not an offensive lineman in college, probably going to sign with Syracuse or UCF. 2020 receiver Jalen Hyatt of Dutch Fork was offered by Arkansas. Dorman offensive lineman Gabriel Thompson committed to Gardner-Webb, and USC offered 2020 corner Dedrick Stanley of Hollywood, Florida. We'll be back.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
All right, we're back. Sports Talk. More Will Muschamp coming up. More from Clemson as well. A little more recruiting here as we look ahead to signing day beginning tomorrow and going on for a couple of days. And it doesn't end with signing day for either USC or Clemson because they'll have players. They'll still be recruiting. So just to remind you, moving forward with the numbers they have left to work with, South Carolina will continue to recruit Jaquez Sorrells, defensive lineman out of Winter Park, Florida. Now, they probably are not going to sign tomorrow defensive lineman Jakeem Green out of Highland Junior College in Kansas, who's been committed to them. He's still got to get some academic work done. Jashawn Sheffield, they'll continue with him. Xavier Leggett will also be there, and a guy that if he doesn't sign anywhere else, and he's not going to do anything tomorrow, he's a guy South Carolina would like to have come in August and count towards the next class. We'll keep an eye on Wisdom Asabaro, offensive lineman out of Matthews, North Carolina. If he stays in this class, 6'8", 275, he could reclassify for the 20 class. Another possibility is linebacker Samuel Brooks out of Miami, who recently came back into the market after decommitting, and he could be one that could be out there in February for South Carolina. Darius Washington, offensive lineman from Pensacola, is not signing tomorrow, and Clemson is also looking at him unless they fill their offensive line needs tomorrow. DeQuantius Watts, cornerback out of Atlanta, is another one who'll still be available. Jamie Robinson, also out of Leesburg, Georgia. Shiloh Sanders, another corner out in Texas, will be available. And those are the ones primarily that South Carolina will continue to monitor and perhaps will have further involvement with moving forward. And Michael Dukes, the running back from First Baptist, could be another one. He's playing basketball now, but he could be another one that Clemson and South Carolina look at in February. Clemson has been a lot more interested in him of late than South Carolina has. As for Clemson, looking at some of those that are still available, and keep in mind, we did not mention this, one of the guys who Clemson hopes to sign tomorrow, and the reason we didn't mention him is because nobody around him has been talking at all, and that's Tyler Davis, defensive lineman out of Apopka, Florida. Clemson or Florida State for him tomorrow. And if the Tigers get him, of course, that would be a big pickup for their defensive line. Quavaris Crouch, another one that Clemson's involved with, who is not signing tomorrow and is moving on to the Army All-American game where he'll make his announcement there. And this is the one where Clemson was strong, Michigan was strong. Now Tennessee here most recently is the one that seems to be having the strongest run at him right now. But there's still days to go before he will announce. So anything could happen with this guy. Jerrion Ely, running back out of Jackson, Mississippi. Clemson could continue to deal with him. He's also, of course, a baseball prospect. And those are the ones primarily still left on Clemson's board that we know of at this time that they would continue to work going into February. And, of course, there's always the possibility of new names popping up.
The things that stand out for me, big picture, again, without all the undecided things happening and coming to pass, is that, Carolina's got two crown jewel prospects on each side of the football with Pickens and Helinski. And the thing that just stands out about Clemson is what they haven't got with their offensive line. And I don't know how much Robbie Caldwell's age has to do with that, or whether there's worries about playing time and things of that nature. That just stumps me why they haven't been able to do the kind of work with the offensive line that they honestly need to, with the way that their depth is going to come up into question here in the coming years.
Well, yeah, what we looked at their roster, and they're losing a couple of guys off of this year's offensive line. It's next year where they lose a large group of offensive linemen. They've got just a large group,
guys who are starters.
Well, they lose Cervenka, they lose Simpson, they lose Ankrum, they lose Pollard, and they lose Gaella, who's a backup. So they lose 5 next year. They're losing 7 linemen and 2 starters this year over the next 2 classes. So they've got to replenish them.
And the only guy who you think is a shoo-in to start next year outside of that is Jackson Carman. That's the only guy. So you're thinking that you're going to need 4 linemen who can play for you in 2020 that are either not on your roster or have not played a meaningful snap at Clemson. That's scary.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. This, we look at Clemson's recruiting, and we usually look at a smooth running machine that they've got everything in place by signing day. Very little scrambling happens with them in terms of, they might have a guy making a decision on signing day, but they have been on him and they've been working him and they know where they are. They've been in scramble mode here on the offensive line the last couple of weeks. When you go back and look at them changing their offer to Cooper Dawson to a regular offer from a gray shirt, and then coming in at the 11th hour and offering a kid out of Greenville. So these are moves that they don't ordinarily have to make because they usually have things pretty much organized and lined up to fall into place on signing day.
Well, see, being the conspiracy theorist that I am, when a team has a smooth oil machine, you got to think somebody's throwing sawdust in there or putting sugar in the gas tank, which tells me when you look at Clemson and you look at the players they have in the NFL,
right?
Where are the linemen?
You're right.
And then some teams will say, look, they play that offense, it's wide open and everything, and they got the tackle spread or whatever. But if you want to play with the big boys, you got to play with a team that's going to line it up, run at you. You got to have a feeling that somebody's trying to negative recruit against Clemson as far as offensive line.
You'll get Hyatt in there next year. So you'll have that. Maybe Falcinelli, maybe. I don't know if that happens or not. But, again, you make up a valid point about the fact that they don't have a lot of.
Because otherwise, their recruiting is a well-oiled machine. Somebody's got to be throwing.
Well, they're always getting the pretty pieces. Clemson's always getting the shiny pieces, the quarterbacks, the running backs, and the receivers. And you look at their offensive line now, and these guys, Hyatt was a big-time recruit. Simpson was a big-time recruit. He was the best lineman in the state when he came out. Cervenka was really more of a defensive guy coming out of high school, and they converted him to offensive line. Falcinelli was a pretty highly regarded guy when they signed him out of the Northeast. Ankrum was out of Georgia. Again, highly recruited guys. It's not like they're not getting good players on their offensive line. And the guys they have committed for their offensive line right now.
Rayburn.
Correct. I think he's the only offensive lineman committed,
he's
right?
the only one, yeah.
Yeah, Hunter Rayburn out of Pensacola, Florida.
They got 24 commits, right?
Had to beat Texas A&M. They had to beat Texas A&M for him. Yeah, they don't have they're going to oversign in terms of the number in terms of the 25. They'll go over that because they've got room to move some people around and get under it by the time they have to report. So they're at 24. I would imagine they'll be 27, 28 before it's all said and done. So you're looking at, in their case, 2 offensive linemen and a defensive lineman tomorrow. If it all goes well, that would probably do it for them, I would think, outside of the ones that we know about.
So you're saying that, outside of the ones that they're going after now, February is going to be basically nothing for them.
I would say so. I don't know how much more room they'll have after they sign these next 3 or 4.
Now, does that give you cause for, the way the class is currently constituted? Like you said, there are pretty pieces. You think about Joseph Nada out of California. That's a slam dunk guy who's going to step right in and play right away, I think. And you think about even a guy like Andrew Booth. That secondary needs guys like that, Jalen Phillips, guys like that. But you wonder whether or not you're going to have a situation where you go into next year and you need to sign a heavy line class and a good line class to replace, like you said, what's leaving.
One more note. I'm told that Logan Cash, who we have listed as a defensive end, could very well end up on the offensive line. So that would be another offensive lineman, though we have him listed as a defensive end. One more thing I wanted to mention, going back to South Carolina, just to mention all the names. Keep in mind Johnny Dixon out of Tampa. We're expecting the Gamecocks to get him tomorrow. Probably not going to get Eric Gray, the running back out of Memphis. He's probably going to sign with Tennessee. And I mentioned the guys who are not signing early. So I think I've touched on everybody who's on the boards right now that we'll be talking about tomorrow and in the weeks to come. When we come back, more from Will Muschamp talking about Virginia and more about his guys here on Sports Talk.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Welcome back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Keeping an eye on what's going on with the basketball inside the state. Right now, Clemson with a 13-7 lead on Charleston Southern as they have the early going action here, the second immediate timeout, 6-point lead over Barkley Raider Ball's team. They've gotten a lot of their frequent bus miles inside the state, playing last week at Furman, now this week playing in the upstate at Clemson. So they've had their way with the upper part of the state.
Citadel 16-15 on Campbell. Late in the about midway through the first half, Bulldogs up by 1.
I really hope that there's a good crowd for that game on Saturday at CLA and also tomorrow.
Yeah,
just because I think this team deserves it. Frank Martin, you heard him say yesterday how much it seems the fan base really kind of comes up to him and has embraced how hard this team has played. And I think they deserve the kind of requisite crowd for these early season games. And that's why Frank Martin schedules these kinds of games, because, you know, he doesn't want to, I guess, adhere to a lot of these non-conference scheduling practices, the past where people play these cupcake games nobody wants to see.
Cupcake games, yeah, that's right.
Well, let's see what kind of crowd turns out tomorrow night, because really, I mean, if you can't be energized by the number 3 team in the country coming into your building, I don't know what else you can be energized about here in December for basketball. I mean, they should have 12, 13,000. Other students are gone and all of that, and that's a bit of a problem. But that just opens up more space for non-season ticket holders who can walk up to the gate and buy a ticket or buy one on the street. But it would be nice to see, from a basketball standpoint in our state, that game have a nice crowd. The game on Saturday have a nice, enthusiastic crowd. I mean, and, you know, South Carolina right now in men's sports, they're dying for a win over Clemson in something.
Anything.
I mean, you know, they got a baseball win, but not the series. They've lost 5 in a row in football.
They got a come from behind walk-off win.
Yeah, they've lost how many in a row in basketball? It's like
two
what's
in a
the
row.
streak?
2 in a row.
Two in a row.
They won,
so it's
they won
been
the year before the Final Four.
They've kind of hit a skid here with the guys up against the Clemson guys, and
did they beat them in
Gamecock
soccer?
fans are
men's soccer.
I don't think so. I don't believe so.
No, but that only means the pendulum is getting ready to swing the other way.
Good.
Fans always have to look at it.
This is true. All right, back to Will Muschamp, who met with the media today to talk more about his team getting ready for the Virginia Cavaliers, 2 teams that are 7-5, 2 teams that have never lost inside Bank of America Stadium, unlike the Panthers. They are both undefeated at BOA, and unlike the Panthers, they should have healthy quarterbacks tossing the ball around.
Man, you are savage right now.
Savage?
Yeah.
Anyway.
You've taken this anger from the Packers onto the Panthers.
Football's NFL season's over as far as I'm concerned. I was just watching last night just because it was on. But anyway, here is Muschamp taking a question from one of the very smart and veteran members of the media.
Well, who does Virginia remind you most of teams you've played either this year or last year?
I would probably just say from a running game standpoint, as far as incorporating the quarterback a little bit with Kentucky, what they did this year, and incorporating the quarterback a little bit. But they're very unique, stylish as far as what they do. Not necessarily the gap scheme running game that Kentucky has, not necessarily that, but it's more of utilizing the quarterback a little bit more in the run game. But they're very unique to what we've seen in the last 3 years.
How important was it for you to get Brian's contract extended and the raise to keep him here?
Well, I think it's always important from a continuity standpoint. I think that's really important, essential to keep really good coaches, and Brian's a really good football coach on a lot of fronts. I think, number one, schematically does a really nice job with our offense. Number two, does a great job relating within our staff and our players, and obviously does a fantastic job of developing players when they get on campus and then recruiting players to our campus. So I think that the continuity of what you're trying to – where we're trying to go and far as creating that championship culture, I thought was very important. I appreciate the board and Coach Tanner and their support, which has been great in our 3 years here. It's been fantastic. and I really appreciate their support. I do want everybody to know we're not celebrating 7 wins. So let's make sure that we make that crystal clear. We needed to keep the continuity of what I think is a really good coaching staff, and I appreciate the board and Coach Tanner recognizing that.
Last year when Debo went down, the offense dropped considerably. What are you doing in practice? What do you want to do in practice to overcome his loss? Who will be some of the guys you'll be counting on, and also in the return game as well?
Well, I think that we're much more equipped right now, maybe than we were at that time to handle that, obviously, and Phil having more time to prepare for a bowl game as opposed to a four-day practice week for your next opponent. But Shi Smith can play outside. Josh Vann can play outside. Both of them can play in the slot. Keel Pollard's been very effective for us in the slot from a tight end position, which sometimes creates some issues for you defensively. Do you count him as a tight end? Do you count him as a wideout? Because we've used him pretty much about 50-50 as far as a core player being in the C area and a guy that's flexed out. So that's been something we've done a good job with our self-scout and really studying ourselves as far as how we're using him. But, I don't know that one guy's gonna replace Debo, especially in this short of a time, but certainly there'll be a combination of guys that we need to step up. Chavis Dawkins, Chad Terrell, we're going to need some guys to step up and make some plays for us. In the return game, I still, feel good as far as AJ Turner, Rico Dowdle, guys, Shi Smith, Josh Vann is a punt returner. Obviously, Brian is a punt returner. Some guys that can go out and return kicks for us. But we haven't gotten that far as game planning and who those guys will be at that time. But when we do get in our specialty periods and we do return kicks, those are the guys we have back.
All right, there you go. That is Will Muschamp. And, whenever I hear Muschamp talk about what is going on in his program, and this is a further sign from the administration, I'm further convinced that Ray Tanner hired the right guy to build a program, a program at South Carolina. And now they're going to have everything they could ever want facility-wise come January 7th when they move into their new administration building. They've got everything now. They got the beautiful administration building. They got the beautiful indoor facility. They got wonderful practice fields. They got a top-flight academic enrichment center. They continue to do work. They're going to spend millions of more dollars refurbishing the inside of Williams-Brice to make it even better. These are all the things that are coming together, and the recruiting continues to be, it's solid. And as you mentioned earlier, Will, I mean, you get a great quarterback, and apparently they got a great quarterback, and then you got a kingpin defensive end who should come in and, if not start right away, play a lot right away.
He should start right away.
Well, and these are guys you can build around on both sides of the line of scrimmage. That bodes well for you. I think the direction is very positive. They just have to, stay the course, remain patient and confident. Patient in some degree, but Muschamp, as you can tell, is not a patient soul. I mean, he wants to win big right away, and he wants to get into the playoffs, and he fully believes he can deliver.
I'll say one thing about he should start right away, because you do not recruit the Mr. Football in the state of South Carolina and bring him here and have the high accolades that he has and not play him right away. I think you just from a recruiting standpoint inside your state, you probably owe it to them to play him as long as he earns the opportunity to do so, which I don't see any reason why he shouldn't. But from the second standpoint,
the Kerryon Joyner was Mr. Football last year.
I understand, but I think this is a little bit of a different type of player we're talking about here with Zach Pickett.
Well, it depends on situations,
Anyway, the point that I'm making secondarily, this is more capital than South Carolina's ever spent on football. With that, though, comes I don't want to say responsibility, but just the pressure for success. And the fact that Will Muschamp says we're not celebrating 7 wins, that's all fine. But with the facility, with the money, with the stuff that goes for the coaching staff, and the commitment that you've brought to here, that means that 7-5 isn't going to cut it anymore. 8-4 not going to cut anymore. 9-3 is not going to cut anymore with this fan base.
But I tell you what,
you got to beat Georgia, you got to beat Clemson, you got to get somewhere.
The two things have to cut it though is this: patience. And the fact that you have a coach that's younger than the last 3 you had.
I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying
he's right. I give you credit. Now they have got to start beating some people.
Like now.
They've
But
got
if you pull the trigger on that
losing
and
streaks.
fire somebody, then you start
not-
all over again.
I'm
They've
not
got
saying
long-
fire. I'm saying win.
They've got long losing streaks they will take in to next year against some teams.
Up at Little John Coliseum, Clemson maintains a 22-15 lead. They're at the under 8 timeout. Most encouraging sign for Clemson, 12 points, 5 rebounds for Eli Thomas, and no fouls for him, which is a good thing.
How many fouls will Chris Silva have at halftime tomorrow night?
So here's the problem. The two of them have had a very similar track type year with the foul trouble. And I've asked literally the same question of both of them. Well, I asked one question about Thomas to Brad Brownell, and I want to ask the same question to Silva. Those two guys get baited into contact worse than any post players I've seen play at this level. Like, they should be beyond that. No? Am I wrong?
Well, but my
Yeah,
point
I
is,
mean, they're both veteran players. They should not
Yes.
be able to be sucked into something. But,
Exactly.
Silva has gotten better. He hadn't fouled
Mm-hmm.
out of a game yet this year, I don't believe. I was checking
No.
that the other day. He just puts his hands in the wrong spot sometimes. He gets his hands down low, and he gets caught holding on to a guy, or just how it is in college basketball now. You put your hands on somebody. They're trying to eliminate that hand contact, and he's been very slow at adapting to that.
Except if you play for Duke, you can do that.
Yeah.
But see, here's the point: when you Elijah Thomas or Chris Silva, and I know I'm going back into another generation, but they're just like the old Gamecock John Ribbach. They walk through the door and they get 3 fouls.
Yeah,
true.
I mean, before you even look at
That's the problem. You got to rep.
That's what makes me think about Alonzo Frank. Officials see how big and thick he is, foul, and he's nowhere near because
he's smoother than Silva, though. It's a little bit I've seen. Silva is all arms and elbows and legs.
Yes.
This kid looks pretty smooth. Campbell with a 28-27 lead on the Citadel 3 minutes to go in the first half there. We've got a bowl game going on tonight as we're now into the part of December where there'll be basically a bowl a day for you. And UAB is leading Northern Ill 10-0 in the Boca Raton Bowl. Who's that sponsored by? Cherry Bundy?
Cherry Bundy.
What is that? You don't know? I don't know what. Brian, what is Cherry Bundy?
Well, whatever it is, it better be legal.
Yeah.
It's tart cherry juice.
Tart.
It's
cherry juice.
Basically has health benefits for you.
Quickly, let's go to Ryan in Hartsville. We're going to hear next from the Tigers quarterback extraordinaire, Trevor Lawrence. Ryan, how are you?
Hey, Phil. How you doing tonight, man?
Hey, good. Hey, while I got you on the phone, tell me about the running back we saw out of Hartsville at the Touchstone Energy Bowl. He was fantastic.
He's probably the best running back in the state of South Carolina. He's awesome.
I don't disagree. What's he going to do? Is he going to go junior college?
Yeah, here in junior college. That's what I'm hearing. 2 years junior college and go from there.
Yeah. Boy, he put on a show the other day.
Yeah, Hartsville, actually, he was a running back for 3 years, and they moved him to quarterback this year. And so, because he was the best athlete on the team, so he played quarterback this year, but he is a great running back.
Mm-hmm. Where's number 21? He did in the ball game. Wore number 21. He just has that lean. You can just tell he has the natural gift of a running back. What's on your mind tonight?
All right, so we're talking about offensive line recruiting for Clemson.
Yes.
Okay, I talked with Coach Sweeney earlier this year on his call-in show, and he said they were going to sign 3 offensive linemen for this class. So it looks like they're going to probably get 2 to sign tomorrow, and that leaves Putnam, maybe, that would be 3. And they've already got 3 committed for the 2020 class.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of think everybody's kind of overreacting a little bit. We are going to be thin when these guys leave, but we definitely need to get some guys signed, but I think it's going to be okay.
Aren't you counting Putnam among the 2 that need to be signed tomorrow? You're counting Putnam and one other, right?
Well, Putnam maybe, but I'm thinking something happened today where they're going to get another offensive lineman.
Yeah, there's been talk of a secret offense. Well, Paul Strelo has put it out there for his readers, and we're one of them, that there's a secret offensive lineman who I guess may be committed to them that they think they're going to sign at 10:30 tomorrow morning. He called him a 4-star who has been committed elsewhere, and a guy that I've gone back and checked on some guys. I know 2 that are not that guy. One is Adrian Medley, who's going to sign with UCF. The other is Luke Griffin, who's going to sign with Missouri. So you can take those off the list if you're trying to hunt down this mysterious offensive lineman. Well, otherwise, we'll just wait and see tomorrow at 10:30. Yeah. By the way, as you know, yours truly will be up and at 'em tomorrow morning. That's the one thing I hate about National Signing Day. Have to get up early.
I understand.
But we'll be up early, tracking everything, tweeting out everything that we come across, keeping you up to date on our website. So I know there's a lot of different places you can go, but check ours out too on Twitter Hashtag ST Recruiting, and our website, SportsTalkSC.com. We'll keep you up to date on what's happening with the Tigers, the Gamecocks, and in the state.
Guy who was a big spotlight of National Signing Day a year ago was Trevor Lawrence. He now, a year later, on the precipice of his first college football playoff game. I spoke with him earlier today about how things have progressed since then.
Before this, they talked about how it's like kind of like fall camp again. Like you have a lot of time and practices are tough, and we're kind of through those tough practices as far as just physically. But I mean, mentally, we still have a lot more preparation to go. But yeah, that's one thing they said. They said it's a lot of fun just going out there to the bowl site and being able to practice out there and just have some time to kind of see the area and hang out. It's going to be fun.
What do you expect the first time you walk in that stadium?
I don't know. I mean, I've been in the Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta, and that's a nice stadium. But I heard this one is crazy. It's unbelievable. So I'm excited. It's awesome to get the chance to play somewhere like that.
What do you think the biggest progression in your game is?
Just my game. Probably mentally, just kind of being quicker with my reads, knowing when to get rid of the ball, just little stuff like that.
And sliding.
Yeah, learn how to get past the sticks and slide.
What do you think are some of the biggest keys for you guys on offense to go out there and get the job done against Notre Dame?
Just our keys every week. I think we just have to have an intense focus on the little things. Little things in these big games are what make the difference. So just everyone knowing what they're doing, everyone preparing and being held accountable. And I think the team's done a great job of that. Everyone's really serious about this game and winning this game. So everyone's been preparing and working really hard. But yeah, just the little things and executing will be huge, obviously.
How do you stay so
Well, I think that's just how I've always been. I think I was just, in a way, just born with that. God blessed me with kind of that, I guess, level head. But also my family and my parents never let me get too big, never let me get a big head when I was younger and in high school and stuff. And then great coaches just along the way have influenced that too.
So there wasn't a moment where like you used to be erratic and then like something happened. There was nothing like that where it's like you were out of control and just kind of calmed down.
Not really. I mean, when I was like a little kid, like young, I was pretty crazy. I think all little kids are. But no, ever since I've gotten a little older, I've always been like this.
The freshman, actually number one in the yards per carry. You guys talk about that at all? And you just
me and Deshaun talked a little bit. Talked a while ago, and then most recently we talked a little bit before South Carolina game. So we've talked a little bit, and that was good to hear from him. Just encouraged me a little bit.
What does he say?
Just the South Carolina game that this moment's not bigger than me as far as just just play your game, you'll be fine. And obviously that's a rivalry, and he was passionate about that game, so he just felt the need to reach out and just encourage me before. Maybe, I'm not sure. I mean, I know he's busy. They're making a run themselves, so who knows? I mean, we might.
Did you talk to Kelly at all after he made his decision?
Yeah, we talked a little bit. Right after. Then he wished me happy birthday. Then a little later in October, so we talked some.
You kept a positive relationship.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was one thing we didn't let what happened and how everything went down just affect us, because we had a good relationship and I wanted to keep that.
Did he tell you anything about going through this whole process too?
Not really. We haven't talked much recently. Just he was busy making his decision, and then obviously we've been busy just trying to make this right. So, but no, we haven't really talked much about that.
Here's a question for you,
sir.
How did hair look?
You got it cut.
Yeah. I mean, like, is it shorter than normal?
It's a little shorter.
Yeah. Did you measure the length of the strands of the hair?
It's about, I'd say about an inch above the shoulder.
So what do you think he pays for his haircut compared to what you pay for yours?
He doesn't pay enough, I don't think.
You don't think so? You don't think he gets a good quality cut?
I plan.
Does he have frayed ends?
If I get a lonely moment with him,
let's just cut it off right there.
At Cotton Bowl Media Day, I'm going to ask him what he puts in his hair.
Lonely moment.
I don't want to ask it in front of a lot of other people.
Well, you gonna play Delilah Samson? You cut Samson's hair off?
That's not what I'm going to do.
Oh, okay.
That's not what I'm going to do.
The all-important two-point conversion. Breeze has the snap, looks at Kamara, right wing, nothing there, drifts to the right, and fires, intercepted. Picked off Dante Jackson. Jackson to the 20, 25-30, 35-40. It's got potential. To the 30, to the 20, the 10, the 5. He holds the ball out, high steps in for a score.
Those 2 points are critical. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, that was a great moment. That was a great read, great pick, great return. Just not enough at the end of the day to get it done. Mick Mixon, voice of the Panthers, joins us now, and boy, it's unraveling in every direction possible. But it was pretty evident last night too that Cam Newton is just not a healthy quarterback right now, and he just couldn't make the throws that he needed to make, especially late in that game.
Oh, Corn, that was hard to watch. To see Cam Newton not able to make throws that any quarterback should be able to effortlessly make. And this puts the Panthers in an extremely difficult situation now moving forward. What do you do with this face of your franchise, this iconic trigger man that so many people adore, and then he's got haters as well. But whether you love him or not, he's part of the brand. But you don't want to be in an Andrew Luck kind of situation. If Cam Newton's shoulder needs either rest or surgical intervention, then why not start that process now? I don't know. I think the coaches they're not in checkmate, but they're in check at this point.
Do you take any solace with how the defense was able to hold New Orleans?
I think so. Excuse me. I think to neuter that offense like that, even though, let's just call it for what it is. I mean, Drew Brees, for all of his majesty and his exquisite gifts of processing and accuracy and that kind of thing, the Panthers were able to crowd the Saints just like the Saints were crowding the Carolina offense. And I think the Panthers had a formula that could be effective December 30th in the dome, although the Saints are definitely different in the dome. But yeah, I think Coach Rivera was very tickled that the defense played fast and held the Saints to only 12 points.
The secondary seems, Mick, to have improved as this season gone along. But even though he's got a lot of tread on the tires, did they expect to get this much out of Captain Munlin when they re-signed him?
Captain's a great story, isn't he? I mean, we're going to talk to him on Panther Talk tonight, the Tuesday edition after Monday Night Football. And Marlins worked so hard to get in shape, to get comfortable, I think, with the idea that, because I really think he thinks he's still a corner. But he's so valuable to the Panthers at nickel that he had a really good game last night, and I mean he had that blitz coming off the edge. Wasn't that something to see? Even though he stumbled, he still sacked Drew Brees, and he's a strong. I talked to one of the strength coaches. Stop me if I told you this, but I talked to one of the assistant strength coaches, and I said, I didn't know what he was going to say. I said, Jason, who's the strongest Panther pound for pound on the entire team? And he didn't even hesitate. He said Munnerlyn.
Yeah, he was like that at South Carolina too. He was a guy that he wasn't all that heavily recruited. I remember Ron Cooper was a Gamecock secondary coach who recruited, I want to say Mobile, which is where he's from. Is that right? Mobile, Alabama. And the thing that stood out most about him was his name, Captain. You just don't run across somebody named Captain. All right, so a couple of things to note about the end of the ball game. Some things there that were not done well. I thought Panthers had a bad timeout there on that fourth down play. It cost them when they were short of timeout when they got the ball back. Thomas Davis missed a tackle, Mick, on that fourth down play that he ordinarily he doesn't miss, a tackle like that in 100 attempts, but he missed that one. I think it was Kamara that put a move on him, and that was big.
Yeah, I thought about that play all night last night and again today, Corn. Would a young, and Thomas Davis has done great, but would a younger TD have been able to run Kamara down, or at least not let him get to the inside until help could arrive. The clock management looked a little loose to me late second quarter when the Panthers were looked like not very tidy with clock management. And then toward the end of the game, Newton, at one of those moments, rushed for a first down and got up and did the gesture pointing first down going that way. Meanwhile, precious seconds are evaporating.
Mm-hmm.
And that lack of situational awareness is troubling.
So how do you think the team's going to handle it here the last 2 weeks?
Fantastic question, and I don't know. I think Cam Newton's still the guy. I think the Panthers feel like that if they can I think it'll depend on the doctors at this point, Corn. If the doctors say he's not going to get any worse by playing out the season, then I think that's what they'll do. If the shoulder, though, is going to need more surgery and a longer process, then I could envision a world where the doctors will say, let's get him, let us have him now. Finish the season with Taylor Heineke and let's get Cam Newton started getting ready for 2019.
Yeah. And you need to get that voice ready for 2019. Take care of that thing.
I know. I don't help myself. I do all the wrong things. Salty snacks, Diet Coke, coffee in the morning.
And
I don't rest.
And you don't shut
Who
up.
can rest with all this excitement?
And you're talking all the time.
Yeah, I never shut up either.
Just flush the press box of all those germs by the time the South Carolina Media Corps gets there for the Belk Bowl on December 29th.
Yeah, bring some hand sanitizer.
I know I didn't get sick up there for the Clemson ACC championship.
All you got to do. Can I hang out in your office while I'm there? Take a nap at halftime. Maybe have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich that you've got stashed in the refrigerator or something.
It's probably verboten. I'm probably pulling about 1,500 amps more than I'm allowed. I got a heating pad and a little refrigerator tucked under my desk. So yeah, Corn, you're welcome to it, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Listen, good luck this week. You get to see New Orleans in 2 weeks, and this week it's the Falcons, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, we got the greatly detested Dirty Birds coming in Sunday.
All right. Thank you, man. Take care. Good luck on your show tonight.
All right. Thanks. See you guys.
Halftime at Little John, 35-27 Clemson leads. Eli Thomas, a heck of a first half. 19 points, 7 boards, 60 minutes, and yes, Corn, still no fouls.
Oh, how about that?
What about that?
Breaking news.
I say take care of Cam Newton, let him get his shoulder fixed, put Heineke in, and then tell Mick to grab a Heineken.
South Carolina's rival Missouri becoming transfer U.
It's not really their rival.
It's a rival. It's a
really
rival. It's a rival.
The Columbia Trophy, is that what you're talking about?
The Mayor's Cup. They're becoming transfer U now. They just got TCU's transfer Sean Robinson sit 1 year to play 2 after Kelly plays 1 in 19.
Citadel up 33-30 at the half at Campbell, and Justin Fields probably going to end up at Ohio State.
That's the scuttlebutt right now. He officially entered the transfer portal today, per reports.
I heard Missouri is still shopping.
The transfer
portal.
Porta John. I call that the transfer portal.
Means that teams can talk. Teams can officially start talking.
Right. Yeah. I know what it means.
I don't know if Georgia
having a little fun at its name.
I don't know if
transfer portal.
Can you enter the transfer portal and then come back? How does that work? Or is that the point of no return or portal of no return?
I think it's in. I'm trying to remember how it was stated in the rules when that came out. I think they allow you to pull it out if you want to, and stay where you are.
Phrasing.
Okay.
I think. I have to look that up and see. Anyway,
I'm leaving it alone.
What?
Hey,
talking about the transfer situation. Okay. All right, tomorrow night, a lot of basketball, USC, Virginia. Oh, and it's National Signing Day, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Have it all covered for you. We'll see you tomorrow.